Come along with us as we explore the broad world of preservation and the work being done to preserve, interpret, and save our past in a 21st century world. From aquaculture to historic foodways to forensic modeling, we're talking weekly with experts from across the globe. This is your host, Nick Redding. Welcome to PreserveCast. This is Nick Redding. You're listening to PreserveCast. Excited to be doing what I kind of consider a family episode today because we've got one of our own from the Campaign for Historic Trades joining us, Jordan Riggs, who serves as our recruitment and outreach manager. As many of you listeners know, Preservation Maryland powers PreserveCast, but Preservation Maryland also powers the Campaign for Historic Trades. And we have a really fantastic team of experts working to support that effort. And we're going to talk about what that effort is. But today in particular, we're going to be talking about the Folklife Festival and how historic trades were recently highlighted and really put a spotlight on the nation's national mall, the place where the nation comes together for conversations, right in the shadow of the Capitol and the Washington Monument. Historic trades were being talked about, which was a great moment for historic preservation. And we're going to talk about what that means and sort of where this effort is headed. Want to remind listeners, we haven't done this in a long time, but if you're listening now and you're enjoying what you hear, please give us a little bit of a review. It really helps get the word out, and it also helps as we're trying to get great new compelling guests to join us on the show. Compelling guests like today's guest, Jordan Riggs. So, Jordan, before we get into it, I want to make sure that people know a little bit about you and get the opportunity to know you a little bit. So where did you grow up, and what do you kind of see as your path to preservation? How did you get so interested in history and historic preservation?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. And I'm originally from Wheeling, West Virginia. So that's in the northern panhandle of West Virginia, about an hour and a half south of Pittsburgh, is how I describe it. And growing up, Wheeling is known for its late Victorian architecture. There's a ton of Queen Anne's and old Victorian structures downtown. And I kind of grew up seeing that area be empty. And so we didn't have a lot of like downtown businesses, but also nothing else kind of came in and swooped those up to either tear them down and build new. They kind of like just sat vacant for my entire childhood and through high school. So it's being revitalized now, and I think more recently, but watching that happen as a student and a child going through school was interesting. The National Road cuts right through as well. So learning that history growing up definitely helped. And I also had the opportunity when I was in high school, middle school and high school, to volunteer and work at our local zoo, which I now have realized is quite a unique experience. But I was a volunteer for the Good Zoo for, 6 or 7 years and fell in love with interpretation. So what I found I really liked was getting the animals out and not only having that like animal time, but turning around and taking a snake into a birthday party and just kind of talking to people about the importance of snakes and nature and how everybody works together for preservation and preserving that kind of species. And then when I got to college, I really thought I was going to do science or something alike in the animal field until I took a couple history classes. So kind of, I don't want to say on the back burner, but my other second passion was kind of studying history and World War II and that piece. So kind of brought the two together and said, I really want to just talk to people, not necessarily in a classroom setting in education or as a teacher, but more of another pathway to be an educator. So kind of took my love of interpretation and history and put them together and studied something called public history. So I'm a trained public historian. I did both my undergrad and grad degrees at West Virginia University in Morgantown. So
well,
it's always fun to say that I started at the zoo.
Yeah, no, it's an exciting pathway. And I feel, and I'm sort of joking here, but I feel like we have the title for the episode, Snakes at a Birthday Party. I mean, that's, that says a lot about your volunteerism. But and I know obviously in this case, this guest I have the good pleasure to know and get to work alongside because of their work with our organization. And I get the sense from conversations we've had that that time with the zoo was really formative, and getting to kind of such an important experience. I think just kind of like backing out a little bit for people listening that maybe have kids or they're a young adult and they're thinking about like, well, how do I get into this kind of thing? Internships and sort of experiences and volunteering is such a like a crucial way of kind of learning what you like. And I definitely get that sense from you that like that was a time in which you learned like, oh, I like working with the public. I like talking to people about things and about why things matter and about how things work and stuff like that. And that just seems like a really beautiful experience and opportunity that you had. How young were you when you started volunteering at the zoo?
I think you could apply in sixth grade. So I did it from sixth grade onward because you couldn't get a job until you were 16 at the park, or you could, but I was waiting till I was 16. So from, what is that, like age 12 maybe? And then I was one of the lucky ones that they brought back to kind of continue that training of the next generation. Both my younger siblings did it as well. So, and my dad had done it. So we joked it was kind of like not the family business, but it was kind of like everyone kind of goes through the training. Yeah. And like you said, it was just kind of trying something new. I always tell that to people when I'm out in the field talking of like, you're not going to know if you like it unless you try it. I never would have thought that I would have liked handling snakes, or we had an alligator, we had possums. It was just very interesting to be able to say, I learned how to not only like hold the animal safely, but like present them to the public, ask the right questions to the public, interact with them, read a lot of body language of like, if I was coming towards you with a snake and you were backing away, I was going to stop for everyone's safety. So it was really a great time, but I do encourage people to try different things.
Yeah, and the conversion from volunteer intern to then an employee is something that's tracked throughout your life, because you originally came to us at Preservation Maryland as an AmeriCorps position, and if I have my memory serves me correct, and then we were like, oh, we can't lose Jordan, they're amazing, and so you were able to come on full time. Talk to us about what you do. Well, maybe take a step back for anybody listening who hasn't listened to any of our trades takeovers, which you should do. What is the Campaign for Historic Trades, and then what do you do there?
Sure. So the Campaign for Historic Trades is a dynamic workforce development initiative, of course, powered by Preservation Maryland, one of their programs, but we're really working to expand and strengthen careers in historic trades. And we're doing that through a variety of different ways. One of those ways is registered apprenticeships. Another is recruiting for existing internships and programs. So similar to what we were just talking about of getting people into the field, the National Park Service has a program called TTAP, the Traditional Trades Advancement Program. So I talk to a lot of people out in the field, whether that's a high school career fair or anything like that, to kind of get them in the field. As you said, my official title is Recruitment and Outreach Manager. So I kind of manage our calendar for the whole year for the Campaign for Historic Trades, making sure we're going to enough outreach events, whether it's a local festival or a small career fair at a high school, to larger scale events. So any national conferences that we're going to attend, whether that's just to network or to present or give a presentation at some of these. Really just kind of tracking that on a large scale. So I can say, when I first started, I think I jokingly did one of these, I think within the first 2 weeks. It was at the local Iron Festival. And it's been great to see how we've expanded from just that to a full calendar of events of, I don't know how many we did in the past month, but my car's been full of our tablecloth and pull up banners. And it's always like my to-go kit is when my car pulls in the parking lot, it's loaded down with all the swag and stickers. And
yeah, I imagine that you and I probably vie for the title of most miles driven for the organization, because Jordan is out on the road, and if it doesn't come across, which I'm sure it does, through this audio medium, Jordan is an amazing spokesperson for the work, for the organization. They're just a great person to put at a table to talk to people about why this field might be something for them, which is something we hear time and time again. Like, we need to be out recruiting. People need to get into these trades. And Jordan is one of those lucky people in the country that is working day in and day out to try and convince people to do that, and that the opportunities for apprenticeships are robust as well. So if people are listening and they're like, oh my gosh, I never really knew about this, my kid, or I want to be involved in this, where is like a simple place we can send them? And then we'll talk about the Folklife Festival.
Sure. So we have a variety of different options. Our website is a plethora of sources. So if you start at our website, which is historictrades.org, on there, you'll see a Get Involved tab, and there's a ton of opportunities. If you're interested in the apprenticeships have a whole webpage dedicated just to them. You'll find resources on the requirements, the application process, what that timeline application process looks like, and some FAQs if you're interested. For internships, specifically with the Park Service, with programs such as TTAP that I mentioned, the National Park Service has their own tab since we're partners with them on our website. So that will give you the links to those proper application pages and more information. And then we have an opportunity page on our website as well. So if you're just interested in any sort of trades opportunities, or if you're interested in advertising a job, maybe you have a small business and it's preservation and historic trades related, you can advertise that for free on our opportunity page as well.
Yeah, we love kind of just helping the industry of historic trades grow, and so we're trying to make it a kind of a one-stop shop for these skills, which are just so critical to historic preservation. Because if you want to save buildings, you actually at some point have to physically put your hands on them and do some hard labor, and that's what this is all about: training those and making sure that there are pipelines for people to do this. So, I mean, that's part of the conversation that we wanted to have today as well, is that, we think that this is important work. Obviously, you spend, 40 hours at least a week dedicated to this sort of thing, talking about this, getting in front of audiences. But it was sort of like we had a sort of a higher level of approval in that the Smithsonian also agreed that this is important work and featured it as a part of its Folklife Festival. So for people who aren't familiar, what is the Folklife Festival, and what opportunity did this present to the historic trades community?
Sure. So it's a festival that kind of brings people from all different backgrounds together. It was established in 1967, and it honors any contemporary living cultural traditions and then celebrates those who practice and sustain them. So for us specifically, it was a great opportunity to go and be on the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for a full week. It was a full day as well. We were there from 11 in the morning until 5:30 is when we welcomed visitors. So we had a full staff at our table with us, and really gave us that opportunity to talk to just the public from all various backgrounds. We had both Washington locals and people from all over the country that came in for this. And it's interesting to see how many people came back from previous years and that had come in just for this year as well.
Yeah, and we weren't the only trades aligned organization there. There was a whole trades area, and there were a couple different sort of pods. I had the chance to be there at least one day and got a chance to speak on the stage. Maybe once we get that audio, we can release it as a part of PreserveCast. But there were different narrative stages, and then there were different places, and there were different areas. There was one about indigenous culture, and then there was one about youth culture, and then we were included in the part about the his culture of historic trades and the passage of knowledge. And the whole theme was sort of youth generally. And in our case, it was, how is knowledge passed from one generation to the next when it comes to trades and historic preservation? So maybe talk to us about some of the other groups that you saw out there, things that you thought were cool in some of the demonstrations going on.
Yeah, sure. So I thought that youth and future of culture theme was excellent. I think that, as you had mentioned, that intergenerational learning piece was probably the largest we had the largest section in that kind of section of the building trades. We had our partners at the National Park Service. So the Park Service's Historic Preservation Training Center, HPTC, they were there. They brought a variety of their full staff. So they had somebody from the carpenter section doing different joinery. They had a log hewing section. They had a paint stain, historic stain matching station. So if you were going in and taking out a piece of wood or something, that you could match it to the original kind of seamlessly. They had someone doing that. They had a historic mortar section, so kids could mix up mortar with the superintendent of HPTC, and then he was using their brick stands to show the students how to repoint for that. So that was excellent. They also had a high school there that was doing some of the log hewing and then building a log cabin on the National Mall, which was just an incredible. I wish that we could kind of show pictures, because some of the pictures we have just turned out so excellent. But to say that you watch them build over the course of 6 or 7 days a log cabin on the National Mall was pretty insane, to see how they had started with a log hewed it for the day, and then would just attach it. And so the cabin you'd watch get bigger and bigger every single evening before we left was kind of wild. I could look out and see it from where we were stationed at our tent. And previously, like, I'd been able to see basically through it to see the other tents on the other side. And by the end of the week, you couldn't see it because it was that tall. So that was interesting. They had a group from New Orleans come up and do plaster work. So they had molds, and students were mixing up plaster of Paris and making and taking their own little plaster mold. They had blacksmiths that were also there from, I believe, New Orleans, and they were coming up and showing and explaining the imagery. So every piece of a fence meant or represented a separate word or theme. And so you could look at those pieces and put them all together to build your own on a sheet of paper. They also had stained glass there. They had the monuments division or company from the National Cathedral. So they were doing the like big stone gargoyles and stone statues and showing how they replicate and preserve those. It was really like a one-stop shop for all things preservation and hands-on trades. It was pretty incredible.
Yeah, you could have done some real work for a historic building with the amount of skill there was probably like a millennium worth of skill combined with all the people that were there. So it was pretty impressive. And we also had, not to toot our own horn, but I was pretty impressed by our squishy brick exhibit. Do you want to talk about that and how that might be coming to organizations around the country if we can make it available?
Yeah, sure. So when we had started these talks, I don't know, maybe like a year ago, about the potential of us going to the National Mall for this festival. And so I had started, when I heard that little like birdie in my ear, I was like, we've got to think of something that's kid friendly. And I don't want to say like easy, but easily transportable. And when I first thought of that, while I was thinking of the brick repointing station that the Park Service does, that teaches the skill, but I also was kind of thinking more about the building and the brick bonds that you see in various pictures. And so I was thinking of a way to make it interactive. And what we did was order, basically I kept calling them fake bricks, but they're just foam bricks, the same size, and they look pretty realistic, especially to kids, of what a brick would look like, and develop these set of flashcards that we had at our station, which would show one of 6 different brick bonds. And so students could go through and build a common bond or an English bond. They could pick whichever bond they'd like to do. And then using the 3 or 4 boxes of foam bricks we had, build that bond themselves. And some did it in a tower. Some did it a small little structure on the playmat we had. So it was very interesting to see that activity come to life. And yeah, we had such a high amount of interest in it. A lot of parents, teachers, librarians, librarians or museum professionals were interested in that. So I've got a little bit of their contact information, but we're also going to be potentially launching it on our website. So if anybody's interested, or if you were one of those parents that had talked to me and begged me to give you a digital copy so your son or daughter could play with it at the house, it was a little bit hot that week when we were there. And so several of the parents were like, we could do this with Legos or anything at the house, or you have those building bricks. We just need that card set. So that'll be coming potentially in the future. And to kind of stay along, I'd encourage anyone to sign up for our newsletter or follow us on social media.
Yeah, I think we're going to try and figure out a way to make it either free or very low cost if you want it actually printed, and just an exchange to get people's information, since we know that they're interested in the campaign and that kind of work. But Jordan did amazing job in kind of thinking about public engagement around the trades and young adult engagement around trades. And we also know, too, that, I mean, Natalie Henshaw, who's been on this podcast before, the director of the Historic Trades Program, talks about how there's this funnel, and you have to have a lot of interest, and you have to do it early. And somebody's not going to know that they want to be a tradesperson or that it's even an option unless they get the chance to play around with it, sometimes as early as 4, 5, 6 years old. So who knows who we captured the imagination of during that event. I remember one little kid coming up and telling his mom, like, he wanted to work in construction now. And like, you know, who knows if that will stick, but at least at this moment, we've captured that interest. And then maybe in the future, he may not want to be a tradesperson, but maybe he'll be really supportive of the trades because he was always interested as a kid. And we see that as well. So really exciting. And also, I guess I have to ask, do you have a favorite brick bond?
Ooh, no one's ever asked me this. I don't know off the top of my head. I liked the 6 that I picked. I think
Yeah.
I did a couple, 2 or 3 simple, 2 or 3 more advanced. The Flemish was really cool with the brick bonds.
Yeah.
Or with the foam bricks.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll put you down for Flemish. Maybe that's a new question. Favorite brick bond on here on PreserveCast. So I mean, I guess maybe what's some of the takeaways? I mean, obviously we're talking about sort of youth and future, and that really informs the work. I mean, it particularly your work is really geared towards what is youth in the future thinking about trades and training opportunities. But were there any surprises, takeaways, things that you're like, I want to do more of that kind of moving forward, or just sort of broader takeaways from the event and that could be helpful for tradespeople and trades professionals or companies that are listening to this that maybe they should be thinking about based on the experience of greeting so many thousands of people on the National Mall to talk about trades?
Yes. So it's funny also to think of the scale of the event. Kind of, I had this, my first realization, I think, at some of the smaller events, but seeing it on this scale really made it show of a lot of people didn't know this is a career field. And so it's very interesting to see people of all backgrounds, of all walks of life, all ages come through and say, oh, wow, like I would have loved to know that when I was in high school that this was a thing. And so these are, you know, parents or people that are in a desk job or people that are now grandparents or maybe teachers. And quite a few comments say, you know, oh, I had a student just the last year and this would have been an excellent place for me to send him. And I didn't know that. So now I'm going to have this flyer on my bulletin board in my classroom from here going forward. Or that teacher might say, like, I'm reaching out to that parent. Like, I still have their contact information. I'm going to forward this their way. And so it's interesting really to see kind of just like a village come together. And all of us were there, whether they were the parent, grandparent, neighbor. And they said, oh, I have somebody that needs to hear this question. And because we were there for the full 7 days, several of them did bring them physically back to me at the table, which I found even, a little funny because I'm so used to these like day events of like, oh, well, here's my, business card. Here's a flyer. Feel free to have them reach out to me and I'll talk to them and give them the whole spiel again. But then to have this grandparent bring their granddaughter back to the table and say, you need to talk to Jordan because she gave me an excellent spiel and you need to hear this. And this could be the career path for you. So that was kind of my main takeaway. You had mentioned the workforce funnel, and I could talk about the workforce funnel for forever. I do full presentations on it, I feel like sometimes. But the concept is similar to what you explained of just how many people we have to have that general outreach for. And so it starts with a number of 256 people have to just be aware that it is a career. And then there's various stages of, career awareness to then that hands-on interest engagement level of the amount of people that would go do an internship or volunteer in the program. And then it kind of goes all the way down to the final stage would be you've achieved journey worker level. So you're in an apprenticeship program or in the career path fully. And so to get that one person at the end, just 256 people have to be aware of that. So that is a huge number. And when we think of the historic preservation trades field, we need more journey workers. And so if we're going to increase that bottom number, we really have to blow up that number at the top of this, reverse triangle, or upside down triangle, I should say, of how many people just need to be aware of the career. So events like the Folklife Festival were great with that when we had hundreds of thousands of people coming through every day. And whether they even just took a picture of our sign or came up and talked to us and took a brochure or a sticker, I felt really fortunate and grateful that we were able to be there and have that level of an audience, because then we can see it trickle down into the amount of people that are following up now with calls and emails and saying, where was this, posting or what did you say about that number and where can I find this career path information? So I really think increasing that was probably our main takeaway.
Yeah, and I think it's a takeaway for trades professionals listening or other preservation groups who maybe just care about it but don't have the capacity to launch a full-scale national campaign for historic trades. No matter where you're listening, there's opportunities for you to talk about it, to share information, to share knowledge around that this is even a thing. Because as you said, a lot of people aren't even aware that this is even an option. And so there are many different ways in which you can engage yourself and be a trades ally, a trades supporter. And it doesn't mean you have to start a full-blown apprenticeship program. You could mean that you just make sure that you share information about it, that if there's a recruitment happening in your community or there's a great trades company in your community, that you let people know about those opportunities. So there's a lot of different ways that you can get engaged, and those quality engagements matter. Like the ones that you've had many, many different times, and you've been at it long enough now. I suppose there's probably people that you recruited who actually are working in the field. Is that correct?
Yeah. So it's pretty interesting to watch it go full circle of somebody that talked to me at a career fair, then did a program similar to TTAP for the Park Service, and now they work for the Park Service, or they have that job, they've secured that job after their internship. So it's kind of wild. And now that they're the ones that I'm sending these interns to nowadays. So I'm like, you need to go have you talked to Ben or have you talked to so-and-so? And so it's very interesting to see it go full circle.
Yeah. Yeah, and the full circle is the success we're looking for, and hopefully we'll get some more full circles out of this event. Now, you mentioned pictures and all that kind of stuff. We do have stuff on our website, and so we'll put links in the show notes so that people can go to historictrades.org and find all that good information, dig in some of the resources that you talked about. What's next for the campaign? The focus now, not only just on recruitment, but on apprenticeships. And so what does the work look like for you going forward, do you think?
Sure. So, next steps with the apprenticeships, we have onboarded and done orientation for our first cohort of apprentices. And so now we're in the employer matching stage where we're getting all of these apprentices that have been accepted to the program. They scored high on the rubric. I've been working with them to kind of place them and make sure that the employers are getting their information and they're getting the employer information back and forth. So we're looking forward to that stage. Kind of keeping up our general outreach. The calendar is still going. I kind of have had this year's divided into pre and post Folklife Festival. So it's nice to be on the other side of that a little bit, to just say we've got the largest event of the year checked off the calendar to-do list. We've got a program that we've launched, so I'm going to do a little bit more training on that. But as you had said, if people were interested in kind of going out and doing that general outreach themselves, I kind of joke that while I would love to be in every high school, and I kind of feel like sometimes I am, depending on how the calendar looks, of like every, at least a high school in every Maryland county. But as we scale this up, I am only one person and can't be in every high school or every county in the country. So we have our Historic Trades Ambassador program that we've started this year. So we had a pilot group Applications are now open. If you're interested in this, if you have a background in trades, have a business, or retired and just looking to get involved in your community, or already are involved in your community, especially in a preservation company or nonprofit or anything like that, and you're already out in the field, if you apply to this program, I'll make sure that you have all the flyers you need. We've got a bunch of general outreach that isn't just, it's branded as the campaign, but it's general career awareness information that's helpful for everyone to have, whether that's posters or trifolds or flyers. And so all of that information is available on our website. Again, that's called the Historic Trades Ambassador Program. So if anybody listening is interested in that, they can either reach out to me directly or find that webpage.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great place to leave that part of the conversation, because that's if you're inspired by hearing this and you want to have a little bit of that opportunity to engage your community in that, that's a great opportunity to do that. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Before we go, we're asking folks 2 questions now. What are you hoping for the 250th? So we've got the 250th anniversary of the country coming up in 2026. What do you hope to see the preservation community get out of that? Or what do you hope to see the preservation community do during that? What are your public history hopes for the 250th?
Yeah, I think it's an excellent opportunity for us to showcase our skills of just telling the various stories of America throughout the whole country. It's a very diverse and inclusive history. We're making sure we're telling that diverse and inclusive history. And then also just expanding our audience. So I really want, similar to having that light bulb moment at the zoo for me, I want that to inspire the next generation of, I hope, events similar to the Folklife event, with all of those kids and even adults having that hands-on experience and having that aha and light bulb moment of, I could do this. This is a career field. And maybe it's not their career field, but maybe they take it and pass it on to their neighbor or their grandson or granddaughter. That's what I would like to see for, I think, America 250, is inspiring the next generation and kind of in combat. I don't think this is an uncommon experience, but so many people would ask, what are you going to do with that history degree? Or why are you going to grad school for history specifically? Is grad school worth it in a career in a career like this? And what would you do or get out of it? So I'm really proud to say that I still work in the preservation field at a preservation nonprofit. And it's all connected. So kind of just gearing up for that and supporting the next generation.
I'm proud to say you work in the preservation field and that you work with us too. So there's a circle of proud right now. So, favorite historic place or site? Normally a tough question, but you grew up and had a love of this. So I'm curious where this will go.
This is probably the hardest question you've asked me today, and maybe ever. I don't know. I really enjoy traveling all over, or whenever I do travel, trying to pop into a museum here or there. I think my favorite, if I had to pick one, if you're forcing me, would be the United States Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C. I interned there. It was one of my many internships years ago. And from the time I first visited in middle school, had such a strong draw to the subject and the importance of that, preserving both the stories and the museum and memorial itself. That is probably my favorite.
Powerful place, and a great place to leave the conversation about the power of history. Jordan, it's been a pleasure having you on. It's great working with you, and we'll have to have you back again soon when we really continue to grow the apprenticeship program and maybe get to talk to some of our apprentices that are out in the field. We'll talk again soon. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to PreserveCast. To dig deeper into this episode's story, head over to PreserveCast.org for show notes and our collection of previous episodes. Don't forget to engage with this podcast by subscribing, commenting, and leaving a review. Follow along on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at PreserveCast for even more. PreserveCast is currently recorded in Walkersville, Maryland, and sponsored by the 1772 Foundation, and powered by Preservation Maryland. Thanks for listening, and keep on preserving.